Welcome to the SQL Injection Lab. Before we go on to Kali Linux virtual machine and go through the lab, I would like to first of all explain the structure of the lab, which is important because as a cybersecurity specialist, you should also understand the underlying architecture. So the application that we are using will be a vulnerable application which we have developed using the LAMP stack. L stands for Linux, which is our operating system. A stands for Apache, which is basically the web server, which is going to show you the actual website. M is for MySQL, which is the database. And P stands for PHP, which is the programming language that is going to take actions based on what you do on the. So facing the user, we have the web page. And for the username and password, so this web application is basically powered by PHP. So PHP is going to execute whenever you put some information here. PHP is going to actually execute it. And at the back end, this web application is connected to a MySQL database. And Apache is the server which basically renders this website on your actual browser, and Linux is obviously the Kali Linux operating system. Okay, so we have covered everything. Linux is the operating system. Apache is what powers this web page, the actual page which you're going to visit. And then MySQL is the database. And then PHP is what runs here. So basically, when you provide your username and password, PHP is the programming language which basically creates the SQL queries and sends it through the database, retrieves it, and then shows it back. Now let's move on to the virtual machine. Okay, let's go to full screen mode. Password is Kelly. Just a heads up, if you are not seeing this labs folder on desktop and the background is also different, you're probably on the older virtual machine. So we have updated the virtual machines as well as instructions. So please refer to section 2 network security, in which we have video lectures for how to install VirtualBox as well as download and install Kali VM for Windows-based machines, and a separate lecture for Mac OS machines. So please refer to those instructions so that you have the current lab. So let's go to the terminal. Let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, as always, we're going to go to the desktop labs folder, and then we are going to run sudo/main_script.sh. Password is Kelly. Now you have to select the appropriate lab, which is 2 in this case, but please be careful. We may add or change the order of the labs, so just double check. So let's go with that one. Now this script is going to pull the SQL injection lab scripts, configure everything, make sure that your database, PHP, Apache web server, everything is up and running. So now you're ready to start your lab. So open the browser, go to localhost/SQLi-basic. So this is the first part of the lab, and you will land on this vulnerable login page. And in this one, you can see there's a username and password. And then you can provide your username and password. And when you submit login, PHP is going to process all of that. And it's going to go in the backend to the MySQL database, run the query there, and then get the results. Okay. And this actual web page is rendered to you by Apache web server. Now, let's go with a user which actually exists. So which is Jack123. So there you go. This login was successful. User ID is 1, username is Jack, and password is 123. Let's go back, try with a wrong password. Let's say I put ABC. Now you're going to see invalid login credentials. So we have just proven that it's an actual application with an actual database, and it has legitimate users, and then you can also have wrong passwords. So our next step is actually to execute the SQL injection, which we discussed. So we have or 1 equal to 1. Now please pay attention. We started with this single quote, then space or space single quote 1 equal to 1, and we missed the last single quote because that's how we want the query to be executed, the malicious SQL injection query to be executed. And we're going to repeat the same thing for the password field as well. Okay, so now this is going to, so when this resolves, it's actually going to create that SQL query, which we previously discussed, that SQL injection. And there you go. You're seeing all the usernames and passwords which are there in the database, Jack, Jill, admin as well. So that's how you execute SQL injections. Another way to execute the same thing would be, even instead of one, you can just put empty quotes is equal to empty quotes. Okay, so you can put empty quotes is equal to empty quotes, and it would still give you the exact same results. This is because as long as the condition is true, as long as left side is equal to right side, you'll get the actual result, because the last quote is inserted and then the final query becomes true. So you have completed the first part of the lab. Let's move on to the second part. So for the second part, what you want to do is you want to go to SQL-Union, UNION. Okay. Now this web page provides you with a list of songs. You can pick any song that you want. And when you pick a song, the ID that you picked will reflect here in the URL. Okay. And as you can see, this is a PHP page. So if you picked ID 4, it will reflect here. If you picked ID 1, it's going to reflect here. ID is equal to 1. Or 1 is equal to 1. There you go. So for your convenience, I've also included the web page also displays the actual query which got executed finally. So if you pay attention, this is the part that we started from. So up till ID is equal to 1 was what we had previously. Okay. And then we started with this single quote, or 1 is equal to, and we stopped at this one. But when the code executed, it actually inserts this last single quote. Okay, because it was supposed to insert this last single quote, but we exploited it by using this SQL injection. And as a result, our query ended up as select asterisk from songs where ID is equal to 1 or 1 is equal to 1. Now this condition is obviously true for every use case, and that's why you're getting the full database, all of the songs that are available. So this was the second variation. Either you could input the malicious SQL injection directly on the login page or in the URL. Now let's see a third variation of the SQL injection attack. So we're going to replace this OR operator with the union operator. So instead of this OR, we're going to replace it with union. Okay. So now we can put a completely new query. So select asterisks from users where 1 is equal to 1. Now what happened was that due to this union, so union basically joins two different queries. So this query executed, and then you can also execute this query. So that's how you can basically insert anything that you want, any SQL that you want in the second part by exploiting this single quote. So in this case, the first query ran select asterisk from songs where ID is equal to 1, and it basically displayed the current song in which ID was 1. That's fine. The second query also ran select asterisks from users where 1 is equal to 1. So it's going to fetch all of the different users. Now if you pay attention, these are two different types of information from two different tables. This is from the songs table and this is from the users table. Also, please pay attention. The table names are case sensitive, so it has to be capital S and then capital U, and the rest are small. Now, this attack is quite dangerous, especially because a lot of the web applications around the world, they're using the LAMP stack, which makes an ideal target for SQL injection attacks. For this one, please refer to the lab document in which you have the detailed steps that you must take to complete this lab. And it also includes a sort of challenge that you have to complete. Please download the lab PDF from resources section of the lecture. So here's the lab document. The first step is the prerequisite where you need to launch the main script and then select SQL injection lab option. And in this lab, we are going to demonstrate how a SQL injection is executed on a vulnerable website. So you have to go through certain steps, and once you're done with it, there is a small challenge as well. So initially you have to once again make sure that you have downloaded the script and selected the correct lab. Then you have to open the browser and then follow basically the same steps that we followed during the demo. Here you're creating the malicious SQL query, alternate version where you use a blank instead of one. This is the union part. And this is where you create a malicious injection in the URL itself. So here you create the malicious URL using the union operator. Basically, you're running two different queries by using the union operator. And at the end, you have the challenge task. So you have to create a malicious SQL query which displays all the songs in the songs table. But you must insert the SQL injection directly in the URL. So basically, you have to insert the SQL injection here. You have to craft a malicious URL here. And the second constraint is that you can only use the union operator. You cannot use OR, for example. Okay. And what's the result that we want? We want to see all the songs in the songs table. And then the solution is shared on the next page.